Good evening. We are the North Columbus JCs. We are a young professionals organization that teaches leadership and professional skills through community service. We've been in existence since 1963, and we put many successful young men and women into the workforce by teaching them how to go out and make an impact into the community, by showing them how to do leadership skills by planning a project and going out there and doing community service. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy our training session tonight, which is networking skills. Okay. So tonight's topic is tips for successful networking. So most of you have heard the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Correct. How many of us have ever been in a networking function before? How many of us have ever felt awkward when they had to go into a situation where they had to meet people that they've never met before? Yes, I got a couple hands. What was that experience like?
It's like a date night.
Yeah, it's like a date night where you walked up to somebody and you're looking at them and you're trying to figure out what to say to them. They're trying to figure out what to say to you. So networking can be can lead to a lot of anxiety. You're wondering what to say, what to do, but it's also very important. If you're a professional and you want to advance your career, networking can be very valuable to you. So when you look at the first study by Harvard, when you talk about the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, the Harvard University actually did a study to verify that saying that many people have used throughout the years, and they found that only 15% of people get a job because they have advanced knowledge or technical skills. It's actually 85% of people are able to get a job because they have a great network of people that they know, and they end up getting introduced into a position. So that saying is backed up by a study done by Harvard. Next thing is your name. So the first thing that most people would admit is when you go to a networking meeting and you're first introduced to somebody, show of hands, how many of you forget that person's name in the first 5 minutes? Yeah, almost everybody here in the room. Because 5 minutes out, you're in the conversation, you're thinking, man, what was that person's name? And I don't want to feel embarrassed because I already forgot this person's name, right? So a couple tips that you can do to help remember somebody's name if you've met somebody for the very first time is if you go up and you shake their hand, and let's say they say their name is Jim. So you might want to use, when you're in conversation with Jim, you might say to Jim, so Jim, what bank do you work at? Or how are things at the bank? So if you actually say that person's name as part of your conversation, it's a great learning and memory device for your brain to help remember that person's name. Also, use a mnemonic device. So if that person reminds you of someone, try to visualize something that will make you remember that person's face. So I use the example, if a person has the last name Coast, you might think, all right, well, it rhymes with toast. So use some type of device that can help you remember that person's name. Next, also send a thank you card and invite them on LinkedIn. Oftentimes when you first meet a person, you get the business card, you can go on to LinkedIn or another social media place to see their picture attached to their name, which will help you also remember them. Lastly, make sure that there is a picture with your name if you do send them a follow-up email or a request on LinkedIn or Facebook. Remembering names. As we said earlier, 90% of people admit that they are terrible at remembering names. A great way to build credibility and to get somebody to like you and trust you faster is to remember their name. So if you met a person at an event 2 weeks ago and you see him again at another networking event, and you say, hey Malachi, it was great to see you 2 weeks ago. I hope your business is doing well. You mentioned to me that you work for the bank, and I hope that project that you had went really well. That lends to a lot of credibility and trust on your end because you took the time to remember their name and to learn a little bit about them. The other thing is you definitely want to, after you hear it, you definitely want to use it in conversation. So again, Tell me about what you do for XYZ Bank, Jim. Again, another way for your brain to remember the person that you're speaking with. If you forget their name, a great way to do it in a polite manner is, could you please tell me your name again? Or if you're in a conversation, you may hear somebody else use their first name, which can give you that's a great way to get away with, oh, I forgot their name after 5 minutes, but you heard somebody else say their first name. So that's almost like your parachute there to get out of a tough situation. So you also want to work to know others. Creating a solid network of people that you can call on for advancement or professional collaboration comes from getting to know others. So it's important to really, not only it's that first meeting that's the icebreaker, so you're learning a little bit about them, but it's most important that you use the 70-30 rule when you're going out and you're doing networking. And the 70-30 rule is you spend 70% of the conversation listening to the person and 30% talking. So if you think about that, it's important that you want to think about what are some questions that I would want to ask somebody if I met them for the first time. The most effective questioning is open-ended questions. It's a question that elicits a response that is more thoughtful, it's more of a detailed explanation, as opposed to what school did you go to? Oh, I went to Ohio State. Two-word answer. But asking, what are some things that you were really passionate about when you went to Ohio State? What are some activities that you were involved with outside of school? Is more of an open-ended question that's going to elicit a response. So, or in the example that I use, how do you like working for XYZ Bank? You're going to get a little bit more of a response and learn a little bit more about that person. Why is the most effective word in the dictionary? Because the question that I almost always ask someone if I'm at a networking event is, why did you decide to come to this event? What was it that motivated you to come here tonight? It could be for a variety of reasons. It could be that they're new to the area and they want to meet new people. It could be that they want to advance their professional skills. So, they want to work on their communication. Or it could be that they have a small business and they want to grow their business. So it could be a variety of reasons why that person is there at that event tonight. Next thing, work to help others connect. This is very important. If you go to a networking meeting and you meet somebody new, it's so valuable to show them that you care about their business, especially if it's an opportunity to connect them with somebody else in the community. The example that I use on this particular slide is I meet Jim, who is a realtor at a networking event. He, from my research, has built a pretty successful real estate practice. And I happen to know somebody in the Columbus area who just recently moved from Michigan to Ohio. They went from the dark side to the light side. And they decided they were looking for a home, and they were still in the process of researching what realtor they wanted to use. Well, what do most people do when they want to do business with somebody? Can they get someone to...
Ask friends.
Yeah, they ask friends. Referrals, yep. Any other ways that you would find a realtor or someone that you'd want to do business with? Yeah, you'd use the internet.
Yep.
So you'd use the internet, you'd ask friends, you get referrals. So in this case, if I were to introduce Jim to, in this case, Rachel, who just moved from Michigan to the Columbus area, she's more likely to do business with him. If I say, hey, I met Jim through a networking event, I think he's, it seems like a very sharp guy, and it's someone that you want to talk to. He might be a good resource for you. I'm not sure if it makes sense for the two of you to do business, but I think it would make sense for at least you to have coffee or lunch together. That's connecting others, and that's very valuable for Jim, and he appreciates that, and in return, he may refer business back to you. So some other tips on networking. This is a given, but be genuine and authentic. If you go to a networking event and the only reason that you're there for is to try to grow your business, it's most likely the people that you're meeting are going to see right through you. you have to join in a group of people that share the same affinity or interests as you are. I happen to love golf, so if I joined a networking group, I would love to have a group of people that went out and wanted to play, let's say 9 holes after work. That would be fantastic, because then I can go out and play golf, something that I enjoy to do, something that we share a common interest in, and then have the ability to really get to know that person a little bit more on a personal level. So find some things that you enjoy and use that as your networking opportunity. Do your homework. So you're going to want to look at a lot of different networking groups to potentially join. Find the right group that makes sense for you, and then learn about that group and learn about the people that are in their group. Do a little bit of pre-research. It really goes a long way if you meet somebody at a group, at a networking function, you've actually already done a little bit of homework about who they are as a person, what they like. There's a lot of information that you can find on Google by Googling someone, or just by going on and looking at their Facebook profile, or even LinkedIn to see what they do professionally. You can find out a lot about some of their interests. Personal goals. What are your personal goals? What do you want to get out of that networking event? You should be able to communicate what is most important to you and what you want to achieve by joining that group. And visit many groups. It's important to not just pick one, but to actually go out and explore and see which group makes the most sense for you. Go join organizations where you can volunteer. A lot of times, this is a great opportunity for someone to see you in a volunteer position where you're giving your time, and it's a wonderful way to really build relationships and establish trust. Also, when we covered this earlier, but ask open-ended questions when you're in these networking conversations, because you're going to lead to some good responses and some really good conversation. The interesting thing about going to a mixer or whatever is that sometimes the people that you meet will say they had the greatest time meeting you, and you'll realize that they did most of the talking. So they thought, man, that was a really awesome connection. This is a really great person to meet. Well, they did a lot of the talking about their life and their experiences, the places that they've traveled, and you got a lot of good information about that person to see if that's a person that you really want to get to know more, and either A, become a friend, or a person that you'd want to do business with, and possibly both, which is the best case scenario. You want to be a powerful resource for others. Some of the best business relationships are two professionals that are constantly referring business back and forth to each other. And that's because they like each other, they know each other, and they trust each other. So if I'm a financial planner and I refer business to a CPA, I have to like that CPA and trust that he's going to do what's in the best interest of my clients. He's going to take good care of them, he's going to give them good advice on their tax situation, and in return, the CPA has to like me and trust me enough to know that I'm going to give good advice to his clients on investments, on insurance, and put together a good overall plan. This way we can introduce each other to our client bases and build a successful partnership. Have a clear understanding of what you do and why, for whom, and what makes you do it. What makes you doing it special. So, as an example, you really have to have if somebody says to you what you do, you really should have a clear understanding of who you are, why you get out of bed every day and do what you do, and what is your unique value proposition. What is it about you? You know, a lot of times when you go to these networking groups, there are a lot of people from the same profession. You know, you may have a lot of realtors, you may have a lot of financial planners, you may have a lot of small business owners, but what is it that makes that person unique that you want to do business with? There's something special about them, there's something different, because they know why they get out of bed every day, what drives them. So in your conversations, you should be able to effectively communicate what it is about you and why you're unique. Also, be able to articulate what you're looking for. So a lot of times I'll get the question, well, what is your ideal client? Or what is your ideal person that you want to do business with? If you're a construction person, you may have a niche market that you work with. So you need to be able to clearly articulate who are the people that you want to do business with, and here is your specific market. Next thing is follow through. There are so many examples of meeting someone in a networking meeting, striking up a great conversation, gathering their business card or gathering their contact information in my phone, but then there was no follow-up done, right? So that relationship ended right there. There was nothing that ever happened from that. So if there's a follow-up from that, if there's an email sent, a thank you card, a connection on LinkedIn, followed up by, if that person is someone that you want to get to know more, a invitation to meet up for lunch or coffee, then it becomes more of a relationship. Next thing is, make a phone call to that person. It's no longer a cold, introduction. You've met this person face to face, you've met him personally, and now you have the opportunity to make a phone call where that person would recognize your voice and they would know who you are if you called them, so that you could schedule appointments beyond that. And last but not least, and I didn't put this in the presentation, but dress. If it's a professional networking event, you don't want to show up in a t-shirt and flip-flops. You want to be dressed professionally with a button down and slacks. If it's a casual networking event, if it's beers after work or whatever, you could wear something like this. You could wear a golf shirt and shorts. So it just depends. You want to make sure that your dress matches the audience that you're going to be meeting. And that covers the end of the networking training. Does anyone have any questions regarding the content that we covered? No questions?
No.
What was one key thing that you were able to learn today from this?
To remember their name. That is a very important thing. And follow through. Because I know I've been to multiple network events where I had to follow through. And when you said that, I had a flashback. So.
Okay. Those two things, I appreciate that, Sonny. Those two things seem like simple things, remembering someone's name and following through after a meeting, but there are so few people that do that. And it really is a differentiator when you're able to do your homework, remember that person's name and follow through, and know a little bit about their business the second time you meet them. It means a lot to them.
70-30 was a key thing. So
Okay, awesome.
70% listening, 30%.
How about you, Ashley? What was something that...
I guess even as a question, I'm a little analytical at times, so how do you know if you're supposed to be the 70% or you're supposed to be the 30%?
Well,
I mean, odds are you want to be the 70% listening, but I guess...
I think it depends on who
as
you're
an
talking
introvert,
to.
I feel like I always want to be the 70% listening, so...
I think it depends on who you're talking to.
in most cases, you want to be the 70% listening, but you may meet someone that's very quiet, so you may have to help out, and the ratio
That
could
makes
be
sense.
more 50-50,
Mhm.
where that person might be a little bit shy. But I would say you always want to, the more listening you're doing, the more effective it's going to be, because you're learning more about that
Mhm.
person. But I do agree that there are situations where that ratio could be a
Yeah.
little bit different.
But I definitely like the idea of the mnemonic devices, because I always have a hard time remembering people's names. Their faces always look familiar, but getting to the point where...
Even if that person reminds you of someone else,
Exactly.
that would be a mnemonic device.
Mhm.
How about you, Greg? What was something that you learned?
Remembering something about the person, whether it be what they do or what they enjoy doing. I know that the second time I met Roy Hall, he had recalled something that I had said the first time and just blew me away about barbecue.
Made you feel good though, didn't
Yeah,
it?
right.
I
He
mean,
remembered.
he had a conversation with you. The second time he saw you, he remembered your name, and he remembered something
Right.
specific about you, something you enjoyed to do, which made you feel special.
Right.
How about you, Ray Ray?
The remembering the names, that was a big one because I have a problem with that. So that was, to say their names, to kind of make it click, that was a good one. I never thought of that. And the dress. Dressing is a big, I remember when I used to try to go for interviews, I'm like, I don't know what to wear depending on the job. Like when I first went for like a construction thing, it was like, do I wear what they wear, like some jeans with all the stuff on it, dirt on it, or should I dress like, So that's a big thing depending on the craft. Because I went into jobs and I dressed all the way professional, and they in there like, you ain't have to do all that for this. you know, so.
You know, it's very important, and it's you obviously want to be prepared for, let's say, the example you gave, an interview, but you could eliminate your candidacy by not being dressed properly, even though you are very well qualified for that position, and you are well prepared for that interview with the questions and the answers. You may lose out to another candidate who's qualified like you, but dressed for the position a little bit better. So it is important to do that. It's not the only thing, but it's a factor, right?
Yeah.
People tend to, unfortunately, people tend to judge you in the first 30 seconds by looking at your
yeah.
dress. But it's something to consider when you're going to an event like that.
We should have did eye contact.
Mhm.
Oh, that's true.
That's a big one.
No, it's
Well,
like-
this networking training is a work in progress. There's a lot of good things that we can add to this. You know, a couple of things that I thought about is when you are meeting someone, you want to give them a nice firm handshake. You want to look them in the eye, have a lot of eye contact, because that means you're actively listening to them. When you're looking them in the eyes, you know, when I went to a training at Ohio State, a lot of Ohio State coaches said, listen with your eyes. And that means that if you're looking somebody directly in the eyes when they're speaking, that means you're actively listening.
Yeah.
You know, you're not doing something else, you're not distracted, which really shows you that you're interested in what they have to say. The other thing is when you're articulating about what you are and what you do, if you display an enthusiasm, a passion, a confidence for what you're doing, people are naturally going to want to gravitate to you. If they see that you're there and you're like, I don't know if I want to be here, this is like, you know, I'm just going through the motions, not excited about it, they're not going to want to do business with you. They're not going to want to meet you again. So if you display that enthusiasm and passion for what you do, it's also something that's very valuable.
I do like the idea of those open-ended questions. So even for me, my homework might even just be determining what kind of open-ended questions do I want to ask, so then that in turn can become those things to remember next time I meet them.
Absolutely. So what we can do as a group to further our professional skills on networking is we can all go to a networking group together. You know, one of the biggest things that, you know, one of the biggest reasons why people avoid networking events is if they go by themselves, now they're talking to everyone that they talk to they don't know. But if they go with a group, a small group, they feel a little bit better about it. So they take down that barrier of discomfort. So as a group, what we can do is we can go to a meetup or a mixer. There's lots of groups in Columbus that we can check out.
Being relatively new, is there any ones that you might recommend?
Well, I would
Ones you're more
recommend,
familiar with?
so there's a website called meetup.com, and it is a great resource to look up different networking groups, and you can find all kinds of different places to meet people. You can also find, you know, there's groups on there that enjoy golf, playing cards, music, you know, different recreation sports, a variety of things. I mean, I could rattle off a whole bunch of things, but it's a great resource to go on and look up some different groups to join. How about you, Malachi? What was something that you learned today?
Well, I'm doing it right now. Is create a LinkedIn. I had a lot of people try to connect with me on it, but I never had one.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, LinkedIn is the largest Rolodex. I guess you could say in the world now. I mean, it's a global site. A lot of people use it now to professionally network, and it's a great tool to use. And I'd be more than happy to help anybody in this room set up a profile if you don't have one. What are some things that you can do to put in your profile? And what are some things that you might want to avoid? How to make a connection with somebody, how to invite somebody to connect, so different basics on that. But that's a great point, Malachi. All right, well, thank you for attending the networking training. Have a great evening.